Need verification on sound, and we'll hop in. Nothing overly exciting. Just trying to touch base with y'all and actually allow you and myself, of course, to just share what's in our mind. And if you have anything you want to speak about, this is the time to do it. Pretty tense and trying time right now. My heart goes out to Ukraine and the people there. Hopefully that ends sooner than later. What I've got is superfluous junk that I don't need to do, but I've decided I'm going to do anyway. So that means, and again, I'm assuming that you can hear me. Oh, well, let's just assume that. In fact, let me type, because it's pointless to do this and then not find out my mic isn't working. All right. Asking for a sound check on a mic that doesn't work either, does it? All right, so let's start with these guys here. So what I've got is strips of folks that I've decided after watching a particular channel video, I bit the bullet and decided to cut these in half. Why would I do that? What am I talking about? And exactly what this video is titled, What Now? Just play the damn game and, well, we're getting there. The rules are almost done, and that's not even holding me up. I have hashed out a little bit of game. In fact, I had a video of that you can watch. But I saw Leon, I think T66, Mr. Leon, and he had decided to cut these in half. Now, I don't know that I really even considered it, although I may have eventually. And seeing that he was able to do that and not completely butcher them and they came out okay, I thought I'll give it a go. And they came out okay. So I knocked out pretty much most of the French and fixed them. And now that I'm hitting the British, it's a little more slow going for a number of reasons. The back has been fussier than ever, not just lower back, but upper back now as well. But I won't get into all that. So, one of the main reasons, a couple of reasons really, but one of the main reasons that I've decided to do this is what I have. Love it or hate it, that's not the point. This is what I have. This is what I use. I'm not going to chuck it. I'm not going to use something else. I've invested in the Callisto terrain. This is what I use. Problem is, if you want to put these guys in line, even with just two stands, they don't fit in a hex. These are the problems I have inadvertently created for myself. It's not really a problem, I suppose, if you keep them in the same formation the entire time. What fun is that, you would ask? Well, it isn't fun. However, it's doable, and that's what I've done. But again, how to differentiate between column and line? Well, you can't. You have to use markers. The other thing is these guys look about as much like a comb you'd comb your hair with as you can get. And in breaking them down smaller, you counteract that uniformity, that perfect symmetry comb look. So there's a couple reasons there. But the main one is being able to change formation. And I'll demonstrate that once I get these guys mounted. Now, again, I've done the French about half, maybe a tad over halfway through the British on rebasing these guys. And it may seem like I create more work for myself than is necessary, and that's probably true. So how do you do this? It's easily done, actually. Now, if you want to cut these guys in half while they're glued on the stand, I don't recommend that. They're not going to cut, at least if you use the method I use, which is simply one of these guys, and if you try and cut through, it's too much plastic to cut through. So you can either cut them in half before you break them off the sprue, which is what I should have done had I considered ahead of time that I wanted these guys cut in half, or simply if you use super glue, they pop right off the stand. I haven't had any casualties yet doing this to the British or myself. Now here's another reason I have to pop them off, at least for the British. The French I did okay. When I flocked these guys for the British, I didn't use primer, and the flock, when you pull these guys off, as you can see, pulls most of the flock off, and it just looks crappy in general. This compared to this, right? You need to primer your stuff. Don't use bare plastic for anything. So rather than just cut these in half and reuse them, I've had to prime and flock some new bases. So that took some time. But mainly we're just popping these guys off of here. And chucking the old crap bases. So I've gotten one thumb. I guess that means you can hear me. Let's hope that's the case. And then rather than do this on camera, cutting these guys in half, you don't have to cut through. Here's another tip. You don't have to cut through the entire base. All you need to do is score the back of it with this and break it apart. There's no point in cutting through the entire thing. You're going to be cutting your head off doing that. Once done so, you'll end up with these. I've already done that, and we'll just go ahead and mount them on there when we get a chance. Now we need to cut the strips themselves. These are strips of 10, so just count down 5. And again, with the strips, you're just cutting the bottom base, and then you're breaking apart. Now, what you're left with, depending on how they break apart, the French, for whatever reason, break apart a little better than the British. I really just use my fingernail to break away any rough edges. And at this scale, with the red paint that will be applied, you'll virtually not even notice that this was done. And I'm not over exaggerating. It is virtually unnoticeable. The command stands are the toughest because they're connected fairly well. If you have a major hunk, you can just take and hack it off. But again, the paint that we put on here is going to do wonders for cosmetic fixing. Still assuming I am audible, as I have not received verification other than the thumb, which I thank you for that thumb. Oh, another thumb. So what's on you guys' mind? Again, this is kind of a chit-chat session. 2 nights ago, I've been keeping up with the Ukraine thing fairly well, and felt this coming, this happening. And I don't have Twitter, but I figured out that if I watch the incoming Twitter feeds from people in Ukraine, it's a more immediate, and in some cases, I understand that there's fake stuff out there, more reliable account of what's going on. And I've been watching that stuff probably a little too much. I don't want to say it's addictive. It's concerning. I'm not a warmonger. I'm not looking for fight scenes or battle scenes. I'm just extremely concerned for the Ukrainian people. And you know, it's funny because when Desert Storm happened and all this other stuff, there was equal concern. But I feel like Putin is maybe a bit more unpredictable and egotistical. And who's to say he stops with Ukraine? You know, I don't know. I think that the man has sensed his own mortality and is starting to lose his mind. Just cutting these in half. And breaking them apart. There. The other thing that amazes me with this whole deal is I understand Ukraine is not a member of NATO. At the same time, it does seem like the world community can do better than what they have done, namely with the sanctions they've imposed. And I understand it takes time for the sanctions to take effect, and the intended target they're trying to disrupt takes time. That's what I'm trying to say. Sorry, guys. But it seems like more can be done. And if you remember the Bosnia-Serbia conflict that took place, to my recollection, Bosnia was not a member of NATO, and yet there was intervention there, right? So, I mean, what allowed that it isn't allowed in, or isn't happening in Ukraine? I don't understand. Certainly, it's not that nations are that intimidated by Putin. I shudder to think that. So we'll bring some of these half bases over and start gluing them up. Got some flags that aren't sticking right, just a drop on the tip, the top of a flagpole. Oh, we're not ready. We got to hack off remaining pegs and clumps of glue on any of these guys. Then they'll be ready to mount on bases, and then they'll be ready to paint. That's the order. So there's that. Again, since I'm doing this incorrectly, and I am aware of that, what you really want to do is base these guys on the stands and then flock them. I have not done that. Why? Because doing it that way means you have to get the glue just perfectly so that you don't end up flocking legs and boots and breeches. I don't have the patience for that, so I'm just flocking the bases and then sticking them on there. But since I'm doing it that way, and especially now that I'm cutting the pegs off, it requires significant greater amount of glue than I would typically use. So any future hopes of popping these guys off and doing anything additional, i.e. painting or anything like that, I've really limited myself in that respect, because they're not going to pop off as easily as they have. So bear that in mind. Again, as I said, the rules are for the most part done. I'd like to add some things before they post them for others to use and enjoy. But as far as me playing on the table, they're done. They're usable. They're ready. So no holdups there. might sound funny as well, but I have to say, with the things that have been going on in this world, I find it a bit hard to find motivation to do the normal things that I enjoy doing. I don't know what it is. I'm completely distracted with concern. I can't help it. It's just how I'm built. So there's that. So yeah, just glue it on, and you're good to go. Since I'm trying to glue through this flock and create a weld, it takes a little more time. I count about 7 seconds while holding down with this little X-Acto, and it usually does the trick as far as getting them to stay on here. So yeah, what now? Well, I've created yet more crap-a-doodle for myself to do rather than just hitting the table and enjoying myself. But this will serve a valid purpose, again, for allowing for actual formation changes instead of just assumed abstract formation changes. I mean, it's fairly important in Napoleonics to be able to represent that in a straightforward manner. Got some Danheim in the background. I don't know if you can hear that. Enjoyable stuff. I think he did a couple of episodes of Vikings, and it was well received. His music, good for him because he deserves recognition. So what have I learned? More Ukraine stuff. I'm sorry, but it's what's on my mind. What have I learned from what I've seen and read thus far? Interestingly, I don't know if it's just a bunch of BS or what, but one of the things that was said by a captured Russian soldier was that he didn't even know that it was going to be like a live fire hunt and kill type thing. He was under the impression that he was just in like a training, almost training exercise, such that his task was to collect information. I wonder, that's curious if some of these Russian troops were sent in under that guise and weren't fully informed as to the full nature of what they would be doing. I don't know. I can't imagine all of them were under that impression. And my true feeling is that things haven't gone the way Russia, I say Russia, but I understand there are many Russians that are against this war. So should probably say Putin. Um, I've lost my train of thought. You see, I'm a mess. Yeah, so I feel like things aren't going as well as Putin thought they would. That's not to say that there hasn't been progress made and gains, both tactical and strategic. There have, but it seems like things haven't unfolded exactly according to pre-invasion timescales, etc. What does that mean? Well, I don't know. Hopefully, that doesn't mean that things don't intensify. Putin has already decided to throw in veteran Chechnyan fighters. That's not good. Those guys are brutal. Not Ukrainians can't handle it. I mean, this isn't the first rodeo for Ukraine, right? This is not something that is happening for the very first time. They've had to deal with this, in 2014. Yes, you're correct. I have read that as well, that these are conscript troops. These aren't the creme de la creme of the Russian army that were sent in, and perhaps that is, well, I would assume it's intentional and by design. You don't want to send your best stuff in, at least as a first wave, maybe at all, considering what this is. You could also argue that Putin underestimated the will and the fight back ability of the Ukrainian people. But yeah, definitely, majority of them conscripts. And Putin still says uh, that the Ukrainians should lay down their arms and overthrow the president and join the Russians. I think Putin's extremely naive, and I think he's everything you would imagine a person would be that would do something like this, right? If you could do a psychological breakdown and or makeup of the man, that this is fits the bill, right? The fact that this is happening. You could argue he's isolated or excommunicated himself from the international community. I would say that's true to an extent. But again, the nature and weight of the sanctions that have been implemented against him are such that it seems like there is fear and trepidation regarding potential retaliation. And when I say retaliation, not Putin attacking these countries, but um, uh, retaliation, and economically speaking, that these countries are fearing for showing any support, at least overtly, of Ukraine. So I think Germany, for instance, is getting most of it, if not all of its gas from Russia. And if you pardon my French, but if you piss Russia off, aren't they going to turn the tap off? You think they're not aware of that? Your second point is taken in agreement as well, sir, that you just posted. Ukraine is a city that consists of a lot of people, and if they, if most of them decide, if even if like less than half of them decide that they're going to fight to the last man, this is going to be a long, drawn out deal. This is not something that's going to end anytime soon. Which again begs the question: how does Putin respond to that? As he starts and begins to bog down and not meet his timetables, to what level and extent does he intensify this invasion? And again, he's already resorted to sending in Chechnyan fighters. Come on, you can do it. Stick. Stick, stick, stick. A little bit about myself, not that anybody asked, but probably over 500 board war games, number of armies in plastic. You might think, and I don't blame you if you do, that I'm a warmonger, that I'm pro conflict, that I'm pro death and destruction, and just getting my rocks off on all that stuff, and it's probably as far from the truth as you can get. Haven't had an existential crisis yet regarding my hobby, but there have been brief moments of late where I look at all these game titles on my shelves and think, what's the point? Why am I reenacting and simulating this stuff? So again, that what I talked about earlier with the motivation factor, or did I mention it? My motivation regarding this hobby is waning a bit, just based on what's going on in the world. That's just me. I mean, I'm not saying that other people out there that enjoy what they do with this war game stuff or warmongers either. But I would argue that the folks within this hobby are probably some of the most caring and nice and mannerly individuals that I've met. You've got your bad apples out there, and that's with anything. But maybe there's a general misconception about us and what we do. People just don't understand how we could get enjoyment out of this. And again, I sometimes wonder myself, but I look at what I do, I think, honestly, especially with the board games, I look at what I do as a kind of, and this is probably an insensitive, terrible phrase or term, but it's like a tactical puzzle that is being solved. And there's a kind of intellectual uh, component to what I do. At the end of the day, it's still death, and much of it is abstracted out, which you could argue is unrealistic and inhumane. But I mean, I think if you made it too realistic, yeah, people wouldn't play it because, again, I don't think that we enjoy or again get our rocks off on death and destruction. It's the tactical and strategic puzzles that we are solving, and it feeds an intellectual side of us. I don't know what I'm talking about. When the body bags start to return home, though, he has mobile crematoriums with his troops. The problems will begin for him, as it did after the debacle of Afghanistan that brought down the Soviets. I think that's also a valid point. The longer he spends, Putin doing what he's doing in Ukraine, the less patience citizens will have, the less. You could argue, oh, well, don't vote the man in and then in the next election cycle, but I don't know that the Democratic vote has any effect on what on Putin. I mean, the guy is going to be president forever, probably until he dies. I think the elections are rigged, and there's nothing they can do democratically to vote him out. You will have noticed or not that even opposition to the war via protest is being met with arrests. People are now allowed to voice their discontent with what's going on. That makes Putin very nervous. He doesn't want it to appear to the world that what he's doing is not being accepted or taken well by his own people. I mean, when your own people start calling you out, you have to at some point question what you're doing, right? And they're doing this full well knowing that they will be arrested and there will be retribution. They know full well. But even with that in consideration, they're still so against what's going on. They're throwing that out the window and still protesting this conflict. 1, 2. So I think there's a couple units there. And again, just to demonstrate why I've done this. Because when you have now, whereas what I showed you before, you could not do any formation changes, and they would not fit within these hexes, which are, by the way, 4-inch hexes. They now fit. So we can represent line, arguably. Perhaps too many ranks for this to be considered a true line, but that would be line. And then we have a column, which we can represent. And that would be your column. I don't mess with march column or assault column. It's column, line, or square. That's pretty much the medium I've settled on as far as formation. So now we're not done. Hold on. That's not all. We need to cosmetically fix what we've done, and that's with the breaking apart, right? And we took our little our handy fingernail, and just kind of whittled those down to the best of our ability. And you take what I've been using is, if you're using Vallejo flat red, and just cover it up. And honestly, at this scale, Leon on his channel, Leon T66, I think that's too dried. He's using green stuff to fix the arms and all this nonsense. And that's fine. No, good on him. And I'm sure it looks great. But again, it's not needed at this scale after we get the paint on. Unless you stick your eyeball with a bayonet to look at it closely, you can't tell that this has been done. So there's a finished, completed half strip. And when these are on the table, there's no way you would notice that has been broken apart. It's just, you can't. That works out fine. So I went ahead and started breaking them apart and doing this. Again, the French are pretty much done. The British are a little over halfway done. And yeah, works out fine. So where it allows for formation changes within the hex, again, also it breaks up the perfect symmetry of these guys when they're together. It makes them look a little more natural, as if they were actually lined up on the field. I understand they were shoulder to shoulder, etc., but it's just almost too perfect. And I've said this in another video. I almost wish they would have gone more along the lines of like a ACW look, where they weren't just quite so perfectly lined up. And I understand that was normal in the ACW era, but again, I find it hard to believe they were that perfect. Maybe they were. We got some more comments here. We were playing a very complicated chess game with our games. They all live to fight again. No plastic or metal. Widows or orphans. You're correct. And you could argue that as well, right? Chess is a war game, essentially. It doesn't represent a actual historical event that occurred. So I'm going to read this other comment, and I'll get into the other thing if I can remember it. The older generation watched the TV and believed the propaganda. The younger, tech-savvy Russians with internet know the reality. Yes, they do. So here's my next question, right? And again, I'm not trying to be insensitive. In fact, I'm very sensitive to what's going on right now. Probably a little more so than I should be, considering how far removed I am from what is going on. But let's say this goes on another week and it's resolved, and then let's say somebody releases a war game on just that event, precisely on that topic. Is it too soon? Is it insensitive? How is that received? It would be interesting to see. I would imagine the reception would be mixed. But that said, let's say you wait 5 years after the event. Is it more accepted because more time has passed? And how should that allow for a better acceptance of something that wouldn't otherwise be accepted 6 months after the event? I don't know. That's a rhetorical question. I'm not looking for composite answers on that. But just something interesting to consider, or not. So there's that. This has gone okay. Feel free, anybody else, to chime in. I mean, it's open forum. Nobody's going to judge you. Nobody's going to be rude or mean. If they are, I'll take care of that. But this is open forum for anybody to. You're seeing what I'm doing, but honestly, this is an opportunity for me as well to just voice opinions and concerns, and instead of just staring at the wall. I'm gonna grab some. I'm gonna grab 2 more units and knock them out too. I'll be right back. All right, so as ordered, 2 more units, and then I'll cut you guys loose. But as I've somewhat got more in the flow and a groove, I think I'll just keep moving forward. Say that, but let's see. Move this out of the way. Cut these guys off. You can play Combat Mission Black Sea right now. Yeah, I'm unaware of that game, but that doesn't surprise me. And absolutely, someone will make a game out of it. And does that make them awful, horrible people? I would argue it doesn't. You could also say that, I don't know how to put this. A game on the subject would lend more of a. So if you read a book about it, right, you're somewhat dealing with the same subject. It is, you could argue, it's still a kind of form of entertainment. The reading of the book on this conflict. Does that make you insensitive or whatever? No, of course not. It's a way of learning more about what happened, and etc. So with games, it is a particular, it's a different angle, a particular way of gaining an understanding of what happened historically, right? And I don't know that there's anything wrong with it. I suppose there's not. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong way to approach this or look at this. I'm just trying to throw out a kind of an interesting debate. Also, Steel Panther's main battle tank has Ukraine versus Russia scenarios, which show the disparity in weaponry. And I feel the tabletop crowd are a bit more discerning than video gamers. That said, things like Warfighter and the GMT game set in Afghanistan still feel too soon. You gain information and understanding about tactics, weapons, and strategy that you do. The Falklands conflict is 40 years old now, but being ex-Royal Navy who had shipmates fighting down there, I would never play a game about it. However, I am fine playing World War II. Go figure, yeah. So again, there's a kind of, for lack of a better term, too soon element that does play into things. But it does seem that anything World War II is just hunky-dory with most folks. Plus, you've got the big bad Nazis, right? And it's okay to play something with such a transparent evil, to play against something that is almost universally considered as evil, i.e. the Nazis. I guess unless you play the Nazis and try and win as the Germans. But again, that can just be considered a different angle of studying an historical event. So as far as video games and versus board games, yeah, there does seem to be more of a kind of a boundary that is crossed. First-person shooters, I've played them in the past with Call of Duty and Medal of Honor, and but nothing else and nothing since, and it seems like the first-person shooter thing is strictly like a kind of junk food when it comes to any sort of historical simulation. I don't feel like when I played it, I didn't feel like I was gaining any necessarily better understanding of World War II. In contrast to, say, a deep war board game. War has been the default experience for a lot of humans in history. Wargaming engages with history in one way. I'd still rather never go to war. And I don't mean to offend anybody, but I would rather not go to war either. When I was a youngster, I wanted to join the military. Didn't end up doing it, and I'm okay with that decision. I feel like I'm alive today, maybe because I made that decision. I don't know. I applaud the bravery of those that have joined the military and fought in conflicts. I guess I'm not brave enough to do it. All right. Breaking these guys in half again. What am I using to cut these on? This is the West Point Atlas of the Civil War. It makes for a great cutting board. Isn't that awful? That's what I'm using it for. But I need a hard surface to hack away on, and this stuff here doesn't do it. Yeah, you just asked it. Are you carving on that military ass? So yes, I am. My dog chewed mine up, and she would not come near me for a week until I bought a new one. Wow. I have this, and I have the, is it West Point as well? The Napoleonic Atlas one. But and I'll get it in a second. I also have something else which I will not cut on. And this is terrible that I'm cutting on this. I should take better care of my things, but I don't know if anybody's familiar with this. Um, this is huge. Here's my hand. This thing is gigantic. Can you fully? This is the official atlas of the Civil War by Thomas Yoseloff. This thing is gigantic. It's got everything you ever wanted or needed. There are also two about the same size, maybe a little bit bigger, a 2-volume set in the basement at the library where I work of similar stuff, and it's just gigantic. I mean, if you were to carry this thing around, people would think you were nuts. You could probably use it as a sled in winter. But it's such great information, and especially if you're into designing your own games and scenarios, you could really benefit from something like that. Break and cut. And again, for those that just joined us, when you're cutting these in half, if you decide to do so, you're just cutting the bottom part of the strip and breaking them apart. And then using, really honestly, all you need is your fingernail to run over any rough edges. The red paint, as already demonstrated, will fix this in a jiffy. You won't even be able to tell it was done. And I sincerely mean that. I wouldn't steer you guys wrong, intentionally. More comments? They do have a World War II one. I've got that in storage with a lot of things. Books wise, a ton of them in storage. Yeah, it is. I'm sure it is expensive. I joined at the height of the Cold War. I knew what may happen if it went hot. Fortunately, it never did. Hello, cat. Yeah, I got a cat. She runs around like an idiot. She had an encounter earlier today. Strictly indoor cat. And when we sit in the kitchen, where I typically do the worky type stuff, play type stuff in here, work type stuff in the kitchen. Open the door there, and there are a ton of stray cats here where I live, just a ton of them. And inevitably, one will come up to the door, and she's like she's trying to figure out on the spot how to act or deal with that, because it's not something she has had to encounter virtually at all in her life. This inside of this house is all she knows. So this cat came up, and for the first time, as this has happened once or twice before, for the first time, I watched her, puff out and look like she's going to start throwing down. But oddly, she turned to me and then started looking at me. With the cat there, instead of staring down the cat, she turns around and starts arching her back and puffing out and looking at me. Now, I don't know what her reasoning was. Maybe she thought I was in control of the situation, and why are you doing this? Or you're the more accessible target. I don't know. You have to remember, cats have not been domesticated as long as dogs have, and they still have that wildness to them that pops out often, actually, where it's almost like they can't control it, right? It's not like they decide to be jerks and start swiping at you and all that. It's almost like they can't help it. It just happens. It's innate. It's intrinsic. And I thought, as she's looking at me arched with her back arched and her hair all bristled out, I thought, I'm not going to test this scenario. So I shooed the stray cat away and shut the door and just kind of let my cat have her space until she calmed down, and left it at that. But now she's all worked up, right? So now it's running back and forth up down the hall. So with these bases, another tip, you do not have to cut all the way through them. Just score it. You're just going to score it where you want the break. And then where you scored it, break outwards and then in. That's 2, and it's out. Don't bother trying to cut through the whole thing. You're going to cut your finger off, or it's not going to come out right. You're going to end up with arthritis in your fingers. It's just going to be a mess. So that'll be, I think, 8 units I knocked out today, and maybe another evening or afternoon of this, and we'll be done with it. No more farting around. No more. I guess you could argue this is procrastination in some form or another. But again, being able to change formation and not just use markers and have things fit within the 4-inch hex. Long term, this is the right move, right? Did I do this? Yes. All right, now we can glue. Dog saw the Atlas on the big screen and had a flashback, huh? You might have to find a used one on eBay for Christmas for the dog there. Wrap it up and give it to the dog. They do. You don't choose a cat; they choose you. Now you can go to the store or wherever they make cats and get one, but there's no guarantee it'll like you or take to you. So, for instance, when I got this cat, I only got it because my chick at the time decided we needed a cat, right? And we went together and saw a couple of them. But when we picked this one up when she was a kitten, when we picked her up, or when I picked her up, she put her arm around me, and that was it. I'm like, you know what? Now I have to get this cat. That's it. Took her home, and over time, for whatever reason, I don't know if it was because I played with her more often or I fed her more often, she took to me. And they typically take a cat. They typically take to one person. They're not very promiscuous with their affection. Anyway, when things went south with the woman there, it was understood, and she knew it. She's like, okay, I'm moving out and taking this, that, and the other, but I guess I'll leave the cat with you. I'm like, that's probably a wise decision because, again, the cat had taken to me. So I'm stuck with a cat I didn't want initially. I only got it because my ex wanted one, and I'm glad I have her now. But man, cats can be neurotic, and the whole puke thing probably happens a little more than I wish it would. But they're not actively trying to be annoying, I don't think, or maybe they are with some things. I'm sorry, Al. I know I tend to do way more of this crap than play. I'm sorry. I apologize to everybody out there. I've even said myself that it drives me nuts when folks on their channels have all this stuff and they just fiddle with it rather than play with it. And I know that seems like it's what I'm doing, but there is a kind of therapy in what I'm doing right now. But there is also an end result / purpose in what I'm doing. I'm not just doing it to do it. It makes for a better, more functional result on the table. You'll see. Trust me, you'll see. Might be running out of glue. I have to get some more. I think cats are autistic. I don't know if I've gone on record as saying this. When you have somebody, and this is, again, I'm not trying to be insensitive to anybody with autism. It's a very serious and concerning thing. But with autism, you're very much routine oriented, like to a not psychopathic, but neurotic extent. And I think cats are the same way. They have their routines, And if those routines aren't consistently accessible, they freak out. I don't, for lack of a better term, they literally they freak out. So I find myself oftentimes like I want to stay up and finish a show. Maybe it's 10:30, but the cat is now running around and crying and being annoying, and it's because she wants to lay down and do that thing where it's almost like she tucks me in and then she goes back in the living room and makes sure no monsters are going to get her if she goes to sleep. And then when she's decided everything's okay, then she comes back in and lays down and goes to sleep. And even that is like a whole scientific breakdown of events that has to occur for her to do that. Everything from the petting and the areas that she has to lay in. And the cat is a damn neurotic thing, that's for sure. I've always wanted a greyhound. I've always been a cat person more than a dog person. The one exception being the greyhound, and I think the greyhound is the most beautiful dog in the world. And no offense to people with pit bulls, and for a lot of folks, I think the pit bull fad, they've been caught up in it, and it's like everybody's got a pit bull, and then you feel left out. And I want a pit bull, and I think pit bulls are ugly. I'm sorry. I think they just look like a muscle with legs. And I can understand the appeal to some folks with that look. It probably looks tough or whatever, but I think pit bulls are ugly. So greyhounds, though, I think they look beautiful, and I would love to get a greyhound someday. I don't know if I could get one now with the cat, but I think maybe once this cat is no more, we may try and replace her with a greyhound. Be right back. I need another tube of glue. Take 10. We can talk more about cats or Ukraine or whatever you guys want to talk about. But in other news, being as I live where I live, it is Mardi Gras, the deep throes of the Mardi Gras season. Tuesday is, of course, Fat Tuesday, which is the rest of the world. They get off for President's Day, right? Our President's Day is Fat Tuesday, so that's when we have our holiday. And it ties in with all that old Catholic crap, but we're in the deep throes of Mardi Gras right now. Where I live, specifically where I live, there's a parade that goes through this neighborhood known as Endymion, and that's going to take place about 4:15. And I probably won't go. Nothing wrong with the parade. I tend to be more of a hermit. I don't gravitate towards seas of humanity. I've gone in the past. It's fun. I would encourage anybody who has not done so to do it at least once. Go parading during Mardi Gras in New Orleans. But I'm probably going to take a rain check on this stuff this year. So, but we didn't. The last 2 years we didn't have it because of COVID, and then they had kind of a truncated version that took place. So this is like the first year in I think 3 years that they're doing it again, and it's going to be. I mean, it's crowded anyway, but it's probably going to be even way more crowded than it usually is, considering it's been so long since we've had bona fide parades here. And I just got a ping from a friend letting me know where they are in case I want to join them. I told them I might, but no promises. Always nice to be thought of, but wow, it's 3:30, so they got a 45-minute head start on their spot, which is smart. There are people that will find a spot for the parade the night before and set up stuff and just wait for the parade and camp out. That's how dedicated they are. A Shiba Inu? So here's a general question I can throw out. What is, for you guys, maybe it's not just me, what would you say the ratio of, how do I put this, prepping, building, gluing, painting, how much time do you spend on that compared to a bona fide plane? And the board wargaming community has similar issues. There's the whole counter clipping thing, right? Or you could argue just get it on the table. Well, you got to clip the little nubs off or they won't stack right. And they look funny, and the little fuzzy things that you go to try and grab one and it knocks the whole stack down. That's no fun. So there's a whole counter clipping aspect. I don't suppose anybody's gone so far as to paint their counters yet. I want to think that I do this a little less than the average person, the preparatory thing, but I'm probably wrong. Holding this down for about a good 7 seconds to get a nice weld, since it has to adhere through the static grass. Because I do it incorrectly. You're supposed to glue these on and then flock. I'm aware of that. I don't feel like putting glue in between legs and feet and being careful. That's too tedious for me. For this stuff. 28 mil, yeah, you got it. No problem. Won't do it any other way. Seem to have lost our music. See, here's another neurotic thing she does. I don't know if I can get this on camera. Can you see her there? Right there? That's her spot. Now, what does that spot mean? It does have a meaning. It's not just a random spot. She has designated that spot as, if I sit here, I'm hungry, you will feed me. I don't know how that started or why. That's I'm hungry, I'm sitting in my spot, I want to get fed. It's too early because she doesn't get fed till 5. It's 3:30. So if you plan on waiting it out, you got a while there. It's like, I can't leave the open food dish for her because she'll eat till she pukes. Even with I've got a thing here where she has to scoop each pebble out by hand from the tubes. She'll still puke. So there's that. Hey, Matt, how you doing, buddy? What's on the drawing board for you these days, Matt? You got any? Didn't you just finish a project that you released? I don't know if those of you are familiar with Matt or not. Matt White is a board game designer, publisher, Wargame stuff. Check that out if you're interested. He also does fantastic artwork, military artwork. If you need something done, hit the man up, and I highly recommend him. Hails from England, right, Matt? UK. Have you made the plunge into this epic stuff yet, Matt? Drawing planes, and there you go. Matt's drawing planes. Almost done here. Almost done. Anything else you guys want to throw out on the table and talk about? I'm open. I'm open to topics, discussions. I suppose I'm in a talking mood. That's why I'm doing this. So, smart game companies learn from what takes place in the hobby community post-release. So I wonder, depending on how many folks do this, um, dividing these in half, I wonder if that will affect, probably not, any future releases Warlord does with this epic stuff. Do they release them in 5s or strips of 10? Probably strips of 10. They'll continue to do what they've always done. Any predictions on what the next epic set will be? Will it be Ancients? Will it be Pike and Musket? That would be cool. I would even go for like a World War One release. I don't know how I'd feel about World War Two. I feel like it's a bit overdone, and there are other things that I would rather see in the scale. And I also say that because I have all that Flames of War stuff, so I don't need more 15 mil World War II stuff. That's that. Boom. We have finished more units, so I think that only leaves maybe 4 to 6 more units. Ancients, yeah, I'm not. Ancients isn't my strong suit. There's certain things I like, but I don't go hog wild with the Ancients thing. But that would be a good gateway for me to hop in. Would be Ancients in this scale, because honestly, that is yet another one of those things where you need masses of stuff to do it right, and I'm not going to do another 28 mil scale anything and try and amass the quantities of stuff you need. Once is enough, and that was of course, the Warlord black powder 28 mil Napoleonic stuff I have. If I can bring you over here, I'll allow you guys to watch me add to the table. How exciting is that? Just overly exciting. Is that where I want to be? Yes. Maybe more over here. There we go. All right. Let's transfer these to the table and see what we got. Nope, we got to paint. Back here. Hopefully not everybody's nauseous and drunk yet from being swung around. I got to paint these guys I just added, and then we can take them to the table. A little more flat red, Vallejo flat red. I don't water it down. I typically never water down my paints, and I don't use a wet palette. There. How much of a rogue can you get? I don't see that it's needed. Usually, there on rare occasions, I'll water something down. But if, when you apply your paint to this little plastic bag, I feel like it essentially does the same thing a wet palette would do. I don't have any problems with the paint drying up or going away, really. But I use a lot of it, so. Guarantee I use way more paint than the average person because of how I paint. I suppose you could also get a ink pen or something and fix these guys if you don't want to mess with paint. Go that route. Cat's still in her spot. The other thing I feel bad with cats and dogs, how often you guys vary the food that you give them? Or do you just give them the same old Roy every day? I feel bad with my cat because she eats the same thing every day. And again, cats are more like this than dogs, but if you switch their diet up too much, then you get more puking, right? So I'm kind of forced to do it every once in a while. I'll get a can of tuna and squeeze the juice out in a bowl because she won't eat the tuna, which is strange. But she'll lap up the tuna juice, and she loves that. But I can't do it often because again, she'll puke it up. But otherwise, she gets the same thing, and I think, good Lord, how can you be so eager to eat the same thing every day? I guess she doesn't know any difference. Treats, same way. If you buy over-the-counter treats, like from the store, for her, she'll typically puke them up. I don't know what her problem is. I have to buy special GI digestive food for her, and she pukes that up too, but it seems to be less often than the other brands. Maps in the scale, just not painting them. Well, I'll tell you, in a perfect world, I would paint these, and they would look good. And I've seen the end result of paint jobs that people put on these guys, and yeah, they look great. But my God, I mean, I just can't see doing it for thousands and thousands of these things. And the ones that I have seen that are done online, and you see the end result. This is like a day, right? Maybe like 3 strips, and it takes a whole day, and it looks fantastic. But when you break it down, it's going to take you forever to finish. And again, there's that thing that creeps in. It's like, here you are painting and not playing. I mean, eventually you will, I guess. And if painting's your thing, then I guess that's not a problem. That's what you want to be doing anyway. But I think we got everybody painted now. Now we can switch to the table and deploy them mid scenario of what I already got set up. How exciting is that? Yeah, right. There we go. So let's bring these over there, and then I'll let you guys go. Unless you guys have anything else you want to talk about, we've touched on Ukraine, which my heart goes out to them. We've touched on cats, briefly on dogs, parades, why the hell I'm doing what I'm doing on this video. That may or may not still be clear. That's fine. Oh, I forgot somebody. Boy, if you miss somebody that you haven't painted after breaking these apart, it really stands out. You can't get away with it not painting them if you break these apart. That is mandatory because it will stand out and look funky. But as soon as you slap that red on there, you can't even tell they were broken apart, honestly. All right, everybody ready? Here we go. Put these on the table. This is the Miro 1808 scenario I've got set up. Minus the, and this is a Commands and Colors hijack scenario, which also ties in with why I created the rules I created. So you can hijack these Commands and Colors Napoleonic scenarios, but not have to play Commands and Colors rules with the cards and the left, center, right, and then all that stuff, and the bevy of dice. But this is the Vimero scenario, and we're missing a couple of rivers and about a half a dozen towns, but otherwise everything is set up according to the scenario. Once that's done, then the rules that I use take over. So again, the Commands and Colors thing is just really for quick scenario setup, and there's so many of them. That's another reason I've decided to start hijacking those scenarios. So as this guy had just moved, he is in column, not line. And column is handily represented by an actual column. Isn't that just, who would have thunk it? So there's a column. Anybody in line? This guy would be in line here. How would we represent line? Well, funny you should ask. And ironically enough, with a line. Look at that. 3 strips of 5 lengthwise. So another one here. He is in column. think he was routing though, so he would be in open, and I can represent that as well. And I haven't tried to see what a square would look like. There's open. He is routing away. Shame on him. All right, and then final one more unit here. Then we'll count up how many I have left. He is in column. I'm extremely satisfied with how cavalry charges play out in the rules that I use, because once you establish that the charge can be made, and if it's not against a square or other cavalry, non-disordered cavalry charge frontally, you just basically roll to see the extent of damage. I mean, it is just brutal. Charges are great in this. That's that. So now we have, what do we have left? We should have 1, 2, 3, 4 units left to modify, and then it's back to the table. Fun, yay, etc. All right. I didn't see if let's check and see how square would look. I'll bring these back over here. Everybody's already left, I think. I want to see how square looks though on here. Not done yet. So we have 6 units, and we want to form square. How does that work? Squares weren't actually squares. They were a little more rectangular in shape, typically. So yeah, you just form square. And I don't have to use a marker to represent square. I just form square. And it fits perfectly in that 4-inch hex, so that would be square. Everything seems to be coming together. Now, hindsight's 2020. I wish I'd thought of this or seen Mr. Leon's video before I based them. I wouldn't have to go back and be doing this. But I felt like it was important enough. I needed to make amendments and make this happen. So, unless nobody has anything else, this has been about over an hour now, and I'm going to head out of here. As usual, leave comments, questions below. We'll talk again soon, and when we do, it'll be to play something. I don't know if we'll be finishing this scenario or starting a new one, but next time I see you, I'll meet you at the table. All right, guys, be safe. And again, keep Ukraine in your thoughts.